Three. And welcome everybody to another glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, podcasting on the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. I don't do this alone. I do it with my partner, Ryan Holmes. RHOLM22 is his Twitter handle. I am at RTPOW podcast. Just a little quick pod here, because you were able to see the practice that the Raiders had with the Rams. How did that go? How did the offense fare? First, let's start with the offensive line. How did the offensive line go? I know, Donald can be a actual absolute beast. Were they able to kind of hold them back, or is that where the majority of the pressure was coming up the middle?
Well, it's good to get out there and see those guys, and luckily at a pretty decent vantage point. They were on two separate fields. I was closest to the defense, so the offense was on the other side of the field. During individual drills, I could really only see Leatherwood, but he seemed to hold up pretty well from the right side, so he was the closest to where I was viewing from. Incognito did get beat by Aaron Donald a couple of times in one-on-one drills, but he seemed to hold his own. Once they got into 11-on-11 in full scrimmage, the tackles seemed to hold up fine. I didn't see a lot of edge pressure coming against Miller or Leatherwood. Most of it was up the middle. It's tough with it was good. That was the starting offensive line. But there were some times where the whistle got blown when pressure got there, where Carr or Mariota couldn't get rid of the ball. But for the most part, I thought the edges held up pretty well. The tackles more than held their own.
Okay, that sounds good. And I heard about all these INTs that Jack Tatum and Charles Woodson had today. I mean, how did that look like? Looked like that was like a theme of the day, where the secondary played pretty well.
Yeah, the secondary had 3 interceptions, mostly off of Matt Stafford, because when the first team D was going up against the first team O for the Rams. And they got their hands on a lot of other balls too that could have been an interception. But right out of the gate, the second play, there was tight coverage coming across the middle. I'm not sure which corner was on the receiver, but the ball got tipped, and Marin came across and made an interception. That kind of set the tone. Like, it was pretty raucous. You could hear the defense was really into it. Gerald McCoy was on the sideline pumping guys up. He didn't practice, but he was in uniform. And you could see the leadership that he brings. But that set the tone. Douglas got an interception quickly thereafter on an overthrow. Arnett got his hands on a ball that he could have picked off, but he dropped it, but he had tight coverage. The safeties looked pretty good. Abram at one point came up and delivered a blow towards the end of practice to Robert Woods to break up a play. It was pretty bang. But for that type of practice, it was a pretty hard hit. It was good to see the Raiders do that after the Rams defense was laying the leather a little bit there on the other side of the field. But the defense played good, and Corey Littleton ended up getting an interception towards the end of practice too. He stepped in front of a ball in his own defense, and it would have been a pick six to the house. So It was good. The defensive line created pressure. Philon started next to Hankins on the interior. Crosby looks really good coming off the edge. He's in great shape.
That's what I'm hearing. He just looks, he's ready to, he might have a 12, 13 sack season.
He dominated one-on-ones. He looked good in the team drills. And Ngakoue, it's kind of who he is. When he won with speed, he won. And when the offensive linemen got their hands on him, it wasn't quite the same pressure. But it was good to see him make the quarterback step up. And there was some interior pressure. The Raiders' interior guys, Vickers was pretty good in one-on-one drills. He got some pressure. Solomon Thomas, surprisingly, was really good in the one-on-one drills. And then once the game started, Jefferson had some pressure too. So the whole defensive line pretty much at one point or another was eating, and that really helped the guys on the back end.
So the depth that Gus Bradley's talked about is something where the Raiders can just keep putting guys in. That could be an advantage for them over these offensive lines the offensive lines don't usually, unless it's injury, they don't switch out.
No, the one tough thing about that kind of environment, it's the first time I've seen one of these joint scrimmages, but the lines are rolling in and out quickly on offense and defense. The quarterbacks, like 3 or 4 plays, the first team's out, second team's in. So it was really hard with everything going on 2 different fields to figure out, which quarterback is the first string, is the second string, which right tackle got beat by who. But for the most part, the Raiders' first team defense held their own. Nassib was kind of, hit or miss. Kuntz didn't really flash either. Those are two guys I was looking at. I didn't see a ton out of either one of those guys, but it happens so fast. The plays are over and they're in the huddle calling the next one. And they probably only get, 25, 30 snaps each in that kind of environment. But overall, I was really impressed with the defense. The speed we saw the second team play with in the preseason game, the first team was running around just as fast and making plays.
And I think that could be a lot of reason could be because of Gus Bradley's, hey, let's play fast and be able to do those things with this Raider offensive line, with the Raider defensive line. They do have linebackers who can run. So like I'm obviously I wouldn't object to getting KJ Wright, but those linebackers we have can really run. I think if Phylon I tell you, they have had a history of amping up certain people, but Phylon is a guy who I think might actually end up finally becoming, what Arden Key couldn't, or some of these other guys they try to kind of pump up their stats or their clout for. He looked like, even on the game against the Seattle Seahawks, he looked like a guy who can really penetrate and get things going.
No, he's a big dude. He's bigger than 295 or whatever he's listed at. And it was surprising to see him run out there with the first offensive line. I was fully expecting to see Quentin Jefferson, and it wasn't. It was Phylon. They got those reps, and Jefferson mixed in. They kind of split reps, but Phylon took the first one. But to your point, they were in nickel basically the whole defense. Tanner Muse was in very rarely when they went to a base, but it was essentially a nickel defense the whole time, with Hobbs, Littleton, and Morrow as the backers, and Hobbs playing the nickel.
Here, you were I had a question about Kenyon Drake. Did you? I know you couldn't see and couldn't see from far away what was going on. You were more on what others, maybe other side of the field, but were you able to see anything where he was lining up? Was he in motion? Was he in the backfield? Did you get a chance to see anything from him?
Yeah, so interesting. They opened up in a kick return drill, and it was Henry Ruggs, Kenyon Drake back there. They mixed in a little bit of DJ Turner, but primarily it was those other two guys returning kicks. So I think he's going to end up being the kick returner. As far as offense, he did mix in. He was going in and out with what I believe was a slight hamstring injury. But he did line up in the backfield. He got several carries in the 11-on-11. He did go in motion a couple of times. He did line up outside for a couple of routes. As far as what routes he was running and what personnel, I'm just too far away to figure. And it happened so fast to figure that out. But he was quite involved when he was on the field, which seemed like it was a lot early, and then it was more Jacobs towards the end, and that might have been more to do with the potential hamstring injury to Kenyon Drake.
You mentioned about, we all know that the whole defensive line in LA is, it revolves around Aaron Donald. Did the Raiders offensive line kind of hold up with other players who are not Aaron Donald? Like, did they kind of hold their own as far as protecting Carr, let him get the ball off? I know Mariota came in and also threw some passes as well. Were they protected in this game, or were they or was it constant pressure on 11-11?
For the most part, they were protected. I think, like I mentioned, the tackles held up well. It was the interior guys. Every once in a while there'd be pressure, but the quarterback got outside. A lot of times in these settings, the coaches blow the whistle quickly. So, 3, 4, 5 seconds after the snap, they're blowing the whistle right when the quarterback's breaking the pocket. So they don't have to get hurt or do anything dumb. But for the most part, the line held their own. They did enough to where Carr had enough time to get passes off. Mariota had plenty of time, although he didn't look very good. He threw at least one interception, a couple that got dropped, just kind of telegraphed and threw it right to the other team. And then Peterman got in sparingly, but he did make a nice play down the field to Foster Moreau at one point. But primarily it was Mariota and Carr, and they probably got similar reps. It seems like they were switching off every series.
Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. You mentioned Max Crosby, and we all know what Yannick is. He gets to the quarterback or he doesn't on pass plays. That's kind of who he is. That's fine. As long as he's still supplying pressure. The guys who are kind of a bit lost in the sauce, Nasvik and Malcolm Kuntz, right?
Yeah, they didn't really stand out, Kuntz and NASA when they had their pass rush opportunities. I mean, it was few and far between, but they weren't really winning in one-on-one drills, and then they weren't winning in the game situations. But the Raiders had good interior pressure. When
Good.
those guys on the inside, they were eating. So I think the defense will be fine. The one Clelan Farrell, we haven't mentioned him, really didn't stand out in the one-on-one drills. They did do some drills where they had two linemen, so they had an end and a defensive tackle, kind of running stunts and running together. And he lined up on the inside next to Ngakwe when they went to those drills. Again, didn't really do much. Didn't really do anything as far as pass rush. Now they did play very well against the run, which was surprising in this kind of setting. But with all the bodies mashed up in there and the angle we were at, it was really tough to tell who was the stopping the run and in what situations. But that was good to see. It was encouraging to see that they held up both against the pass and the run, considering they basically played a nickel defense the whole practice.
Cool. I think that's pretty much it. Any on the linebackers, and safeties.
Littleton looked good. Moreau was flying around the field.
Yeah,
Abram looked good. He was in the box. Abram made a lot of run stops.
Good.
Where he was up around the line and then did make the big pass breakup to Robert Woods late. He did have a play down the field where he was one-on-one with Deshaun Jackson and was able to stop it from being a completion. It probably could have been pass interference. The refs did not throw a flag on that play. There was a little bit of contact, but he ran stride for stride with Deshaun Jackson, so that was good. Offensively, Renfro had a day. He made a bunch of acrobatic catches, and he ate in the slot. Zay Jones, again, made a ton of catches. He was getting a lot of balls. Willie Snead, Mariota must love Willie Snead because it seemed like every time he made a completion, he threw it to Snead over the middle. He did pretty well. So Brian Edwards, I know a lot of people are reaching out. Hey, what about Edwards? There was one big play down the sideline where he got a pass interference call that could have been a touchdown. But other than that, most of the stuff to him was short and underneath, and they quickly rallied for the tackle. Not a lot of balls down the field to him, but late in practice, there was two big plays to Ruggs. Carr hit Ruggs on a deep touchdown. He split double coverage and ran away from him. Carr put it right on the money. And later they got him on an over route in a 2-minute drill for probably a 40-yard gain, and he was flying. So Ruggs had a couple drops early underneath on some short stuff, but when they had dialed him up down the field, he made some plays there towards the end of practice. But overall, the defense played really well. It was very encouraging. The offense kind of up and down at times, but there was some big plays, some explosive plays. So that was good to see.
Yeah, it's good to see. Good to see. I mean, Carr had a lot of 40-yard completions last year, so hopefully they can get more with that speed. Good to see. Was it kind of crazy to see Ruggs run away from people like that and live?
Yeah, I mean, we were sitting there, and I'm just like, hey, they need to go deep the Ruggs, and boom, when they did it, like they had him double covered. He just split him and got separation, and Carr put it right on the money, and it was quick. Probably 50 yards in the air. It wasn't like a short pass that he ran away with, but once it was in the air, he had a second gear, and they had no chance.
Yeah, once he knows it's coming, he was out of here. So cool, that's great. Next week, we will. Let's see here on the. Let's go NFC and NFC and AFC North, right? We are obviously purposely saving the NFC and AFC West for last. I think our fans should already know that.
Yep.
We should already know that. But yeah, cool. Yep. Cool. So it should be fun. Fun times as far as that goes. Good show. A great episode as far as that goes. Julian Council from Locked On Panthers joined us. Got some good insight for our fans of the Put On Raiders podcast, because you were able to see some stuff live and tweeting that stuff out. We appreciate that. And all those folks listen on Twitter, Instagram, podcast. Listen, thank you for listening, and rate, review, and subscribe. Keep those coming. And like us on YouTube as well. All right, Ryan. Have a good night.
You too. Take care.
Okay.